I welcome you all to Crime Tales USA. In today's video, we are going to talk about 15 true Tennessee murders that will keep you up at night. Tennessee has its own rough past, drenched in murder stories that will keep you locking your doors. The first one in the list is Tony Von Carruthers. In February of 1994, Tony shot his mother, her teenage associate, and his drug dealer in the Memphis area. He then took them to Rose Hill Cemetery and proceeded to bury them alive. He now sits on the death row but continues to maintain his story that he was framed. What was the nature of his crime? He was classified as murderer. His characteristics were kidnapping, robbery, and drugs. Number of victims were 3. Date of murder February 24, 1994. Date of birth July 1, 1968. Victims profile drug dealer Marcellus Anderson 21, his mother Deloise Anderson, and Frederick Tucker. Method of murder was shooting, buried alive in a grave at Rose Hill Cemetery. Location Shelby County, Tennessee, USA. Status is sentenced to death on April 26, 1996. Next in the list is Jim David Adkissen. One of the most notorious shootings in the state took place at the Unitarian Universalist Church in Knoxville. Adkissen later admitted to targeting Democrats when he opened fire on the church congregation in July 2008. Leaving 2 killed and 6 injured. He is now serving life in prison at the Northwest Correctional Complex prison. What we know about Jim David Adkissen is his classification was as a murderer. Characteristics were shooting, rampage, motivated by a desire to kill liberals and Democrats. Number of victims were 2. Date of birth was June 25, 1950. Date of arrest same day as the murder. Date of murder July 27, 2008. Victims profile Greg McKendry 60 and Linda Krager 61. Method of murder was shooting. Location Knoxville, Tennessee, USA. Status pleaded guilty, sentenced to life in prison without parole on February 9, 2009. Next in the list is Andre S. Bland. October of 1992 found Bland in his apartment complex parking lot with a gun, and the evening ended with the death of Ontrain Sanders. The shooting took place in Shelby County and he confessed to the crime the next day. Andreas Bland's profile says he was classified as a murderer. Characteristics were robbery. Number of victims was 1. Date of murder October 11, 1992. Date of arrest next day. Date of birth September 15, 1973. Victims profile on-train Terry Sanders, his age was 20. Method of murder was shooting. Location Shelby County, Tennessee, USA. Status of Andreas Bland is sentenced to death on March 31, 1994. Next in the list is Thomas Dee Huskey. He was known as Zoo Man. A convicted rapist and believed serial killer, Huskey murdered his victim, all Knoxville prostitutes, by strangulation. He garnered his nickname from the local women of the night because he liked to have sex near the Knoxville Zoo. This may be due to his former job as an elephant trainer. Huskey was sentenced to 66 years in prison for rape but was not convicted of the murders due to the supposed mistrial in 1999. What we know about Thomas Dee Huskey: he was classified as a serial killer. Characteristics: convicted rapist, nicknamed Zoo Man by local prostitutes because he liked to have sex by Knoxville Zoo. Number of victims 0 to 4. Date of murders 1991 to 1992. Date of arrest October 21, 1992. Victims profile Patricia Rose Anderson, Patricia Ann Johnson, Darlene Smith, and Suzanne East Stone. Method of murder was strangulation. Location was Knoxville, Tennessee, USA. Status: he was sentenced to 66 years in prison term for raping 4 other women. In the quadruple murder trial was declared mistrial on February 13, 1999. Next in the list is Lord Ronald Williams. After escaping from the Memphis Correctional Center in April 91, Williams shot and killed a Memphis police officer and Roman Catholic priest. He was caught in May and sentenced to twin life sentences. Laron Ronald Williams' profile says he was classified as a murderer. Characteristics were escape, robbery to avoid arrest. Number of victims were 3. Date of murder was 1978 and 1981. Date of arrest May 17, 1981. Victims profile: Tara L. Wetlaw, she was a prostitute. Rave John Leigh Jackson, Memphis Police Lieutenant Clarence P. Cox. Method of murder was shooting. Location Tennessee, USA. Status sentenced to 10 years in prison on January 4, 1979. Escaped in April 1981. Sentenced to death in 1981. Fatally beaten by other inmates on July 7, 1985. Next in the list is Byron Looper, as known as Low Tex. A former Tennessee politician, Looper changed his name to Low Tex, hoping to push his career forward. However, when the active Ku Klux Klan member shot State Senator Tommy Burks to death in October 1998, he lost all chances at winning office. Looper was sentenced to life prison and died in 2013. What do we know about Looper? He was classified as a murderer. Characteristics: former Republican politician. Number of victims 1. Date of murder October 19, 1998. Date of arrest 4 days after. Date of birth September 15, 1964. Victims profile: Tennessee State Senator Tommy Burks, 58. Method of murder was shooting. Location Cumberland County, Tennessee, USA. Byron was sentenced to life prison on August 23, 2000. Died in prison on June 26, 2013. Next in the list is Leicester Street mass murders. In Memphis 2008, Jesse Doston was charged with 6 counts of murder. He used both a shotgun and a knife to kill family members and visiting friends. Doston had already spent 14 years in prison and committed these crimes shortly after his release. What do we know about Jesse Doston? He was classified as a mass murderer. Characteristics were argument with his brother. Number of victims were 7. Date of murders January 8, 1994 and March 2, 2008. Date of arrest 5 days after. Date of birth December 19, 1974. What was method of murder? Shooting, stabbing with knife. Location Memphis, Tennessee, USA. He was sentenced to 18 years in prison on November 21, 1994. Released on parole on August 27, 2007. Sentenced to 6 death sentences on October 12, 2010. Next in the list is Jerry Ray Davidson. 43 years old Virginia Jackson was found naked and mutilated in Dickson County in 1995. Her body was so dismembered that the coroner was unable to determine the specific cause of death. Davidson has since been sentenced to death for the crime. Davidson was classified as a murderer. His characteristics were rape and mutilation. Number of victims was 1. Date of murder September 26, 1995. Date of arrest October 19, 1995. Date of birth June 12, 1943. Victim profile Virginia Jackson, 43. Method of murder was a cause of death could not be determined from Jackson's remains. Location was Dickson County, Tennessee, USA. He was sentenced to death on September 3, 1997. Next in the list is Sedley Alley. On July 11, 1985, Alley kidnapped 19-year-old Suzanne Collins and beat her to death with a screwdriver the night before her graduation from the Millington Naval Base. Although Alley attempted to convince the jury that he suffered from a multiple personality disorder, he was executed by lethal injection in 2006, only the second time this method of execution was used in the state since 1960. Sedley Alley was classified as a murder. Characteristics were rape. Number of victims were 1. Date of murder was July 11, 1985. Date of arrest was same day. Date of birth August 16, 1955. Victims profile Lance Corporal Suzanne Mary Collins. She was 19. Method of murder was beating. Location was Millington Naval Base, Tennessee, USA. He was executed by lethal injection in Tennessee on June 28, 2006. Next in the list is Hubert Glenn Sexton. Sentenced to death after the murders of Stanley and Terry Sue Goodman in Scott County, Sexton admitted to sexually abusing the two and leaving their bodies to be found by their young teenage daughter. She discovered them in their bed after they were shot to death. On June 30, 2001, Sexton was sentenced to death and awaits execution on death row. Hubert Glenn Sexton was classified as a murderer. His characteristics were allegations of sexual abuse. Number of victims were 2. Date of murder was May 20, 2000. Date of arrest 5 days after. Date of birth June 1, 1971. Victims profile Stanley Goodman and Terry Sue Goodman. Method of murder was shooting. Location Scott County, Tennessee, USA. He was sentenced to death on June 30, 2001. Next in the list is William Eugene Hall. Stewart County was the location for the murders of Merrill and Buford Wester. Hall broke into their home with Derek Quintero, both of whom had recently escaped from a Kentucky prison, and killed the couple in their sleep. Their bodies were found 2 days later by a neighbor. William Eugene Hall was classified as a murderer. Characteristics were prison escape robbery. Number of victims were 2. Date of murder was June 22, 1988. Date of arrest July 6, 1988. Date of birth October 9, 1956. Victims profile Myrtle and Buford Wester. Method of murder was shooting. Location Stewart County, Tennessee, USA. He was sentenced to death on December 4, 1991. Next in the list is Leonard Young. The murders of William Bramlett and young Cord Hillary Johnson were committed by Young, who was stalking a former girlfriend. Young carried a sawed-off shotgun and knife on his person and exhibited intensive overskill with each of his victims. Many believe he was deeply psychologically disturbed. He is currently serving his sentence on death row. Leonard Young was classified as a murderer. Characteristics of robberies: number of victims 2. Date of murders November 16 and 19, 1999. Date of arrest November 30, 1999. Victims profile William Bramlett and Hillary Johnson 24. Method of murder shooting, stabbing with knife. Location Mississippi and Tennessee, USA. He was sentenced to death in Tennessee on November 8, 2002. Next in the list is Richard Odom. While already on the run, Odom raped and murdered 77-year-old Mina Johnson as he fled Mississippi. The body was found in the back seat of the victim's car and showed signs of severe sexual trauma with multiple stab wounds. Odom was convicted and sentenced to life in prison as a result of his fingerprints being recovered from the scene. Richard Odom was classified as a homicide murderer. Characteristics: juvenile, robbery, rape. Number of victims 2. Date of murder May 4, 1978 and May 10, 1991. Date of birth August 13, 1960. Victim profile Mary Rebecca Roberts and Mina Ethyle Johnson 77. Method of murder was shooting, stabbing with a knife. Location Rankin County, Mississippi and Shelby County, Tennessee, USA. He pleaded guilty in the Mississippi in 1978 and received a life sentence, retired and again convicted in 1998, sentenced to death in Tennessee on October 15, 1992. Next in the list is Billy Ray Irick. 7-year-old Paula K. Dyer was found raped and murdered in Knoxville, with all the evidence pointing towards Irick, who was a friend of her parents. Irick was supposed to be babysitting the girl, but she was found asphyxiated in her living room. Irick was discovered hiding beneath a bridge and confessed to killing Dyer. He pleaded severe mental illness but was ultimately sentenced to death. Billy Ray Irick was classified as a murderer. Characteristics were rape and sodomy. Number of victims 1. Date of murder April 15, 1985. Date of arrest next day. Date of birth August 26, 1958. Victims profile Paula K. Dyer, she was 7. Method of murder was suffocation. Location Knox County, Tennessee, USA. And status is sentenced to death on December 3, 1986. Next in the list and last in the list is Garland Milam, as known as Soul Sucker. Not much is known about the Milam, save that he was homeless and lived in the woods. He confessed to the police that he strangled 2 or 3 other homeless men. Milam told the police that he got addicted to sucking the souls out of people. He pleaded guilty and is serving 2 life sentences. Garland Ray Milam was classified as a murderer. Characteristics were homeless. He told police he got addicted to sucking the souls out of people. Number of victims 2 to 3. Date of murder July 2005. Date of arrest August 13, 2005. He surrendered. Date of birth 1965. Victims profile Johnny Paul Davis 48 and Tim McCoy 48. They were homeless acquaintances. Method of murder was stabbing with knife. Ligature strangulation. Location Arizona and Tennessee, USA. He pleaded guilty, received 2 51-year sentences on January 24 and 2007. So this is all about today's video, and if you are looking for another interesting video, please subscribe our channel for more updates.